Welcome to another day in the Matrix. Waters above crypto. I'm sending you all love and high vibrations and wishing everyone a great start to their week. This week is very important, so I'll be starting out today's video with the Gematria decode and covering the date numerology, and then we'll jump into the charts of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and XRP to do some technical analysis and share the setup for this week. So if you're new here, we do cryptocurrency technical analysis and combine it with Gematria, numerology, and astrology to understand these markets. Feel free to subscribe and turn on the bell notification to stay updated on when new videos come out. And make sure to give this video a like and share this channel with other conscious beings to help grow this community. And for those of you that want to learn how to do technical analysis and combine it with Gematria, you can join my Mastermind course. The link to my website can be found in the description box of this video and in the pinned comment below for access to the Mastermind course. And with that being said, let's take the red pill. So, couple things that we discussed last week was kind of this idea that the month of April would definitely be a roller coaster ride. It's historically a pretty interesting month regarding how the stock market operates. And with that being said, we're definitely seeing some choppy price action across the board, definitely with the stock market. We're used to this in crypto by now, though. So, as you know, the month started out with a new moon. And lately, we've been transitioning closer to the full moon. The full moon will be on this exact date of April 16th, and that is about 4 days away. I've been teaching you guys now for months how we typically get a bearish move into the full moon, and it's about 5 days before, up to 5 days after, we typically get our microcycle lows. So the fact that we got a pretty substantial correction yesterday, which was a full 5 days before the full moon, that's sort of within our target window. And we've seen when this happens, and again, not necessarily saying yesterday was the bottom, but just letting you know how this works month after month after month, pretty much since I've started this YouTube channel, which was about 1 year ago. Exposing how this lunar cycle is a little bit of a cheat code into getting us ready for any moves to the upside or to the downside. So let's just quickly go over this. This date over here we've been talking about for quite a while. It's the start of Rosh Hashanah, the Hebrew New Year, and this was also the start of the Shemitah year, which is a 7-year cycle, and we're currently in that cycle, and every 7 years we typically have a bigger correction at the end of the Shemitah. So since we're in it right there, we're not just at the end yet. We still have some time, and that'll be September 26th of this year. So with that being said, we're within it, and we can see that the date numerology on this specific day was the 57, and yesterday was also sharing that date of the 57. And I'm going to make a deeper connection in a moment, but for those of you that were following my channel before the month of September, you remember me saying that as we gear up towards the month of August, I would anticipate August to be predominantly bullish towards the end of the month, moving into the start of Shemitah, which was this exact date, and then to have a little bit of a correction. This correction was to shake out retail, to get people to thinking that the bull run was over, etc. It's all done and manipulated by astrology, by the Hebrew calendar, by Gematria, by numerology, etc. So this big correction that we got on this date and tying to that 57 number, and of course we have the same effect happening yesterday tying to this 57 number. This is how I start to take note of what I'm seeing, the patterns, and this is how we can utilize the Gematria or the numerological connections that we're making. So one other thing to mention about this number 57 and yesterday was it was a Monday, which is the day of the moon. And we could see right here that moon also equals 57, all right? And yesterday, again, date numerology of 57. And everything that we're seeing energetically that's happening in this market has to deal with the lunar cycle, okay? So we'll keep going on this, but I think that's an awesome connection just to be nice and simple, add in the astrological function to it all. So another thing to mention is today will be 7 months and 5 days since the start of Rosh Hashanah. Again, we were just talking about the number 57, and the mirror of the number 57 is 75. And here we are, and we're actually seeing a little bit of a reverse in regards to price action. Bitcoin yesterday deep in the red, Bitcoin today so far green, bouncing slightly. And that's typically what we get. It also not not esoteric at all, a more exoteric thing. Typically, when we have a sell-off on a Monday in the stock market, we rebound on a Tuesday. That's just been how it's been going since forever, pretty much. Whenever we have a really oversold market to kick off the week, we tend to recover at least by Wednesday. That's just how it goes. Anyone who trades Forex or studies the stock market in general, you'll know what I'm saying. So when we have lots of drama in one direction, that drama gets bought back by the sophisticated players the following day. It's essentially to shake out the more unsophisticated, over leveraged players in this game, and they just keep, the institutional player just keeps wiping out everyone through their emotional state, because the players at the top know that this game is not a game of emotions. So where that's going right now is we're transitioning into tomorrow, which is Wednesday, the day of Mercury, miércoles, and we're going to see an amazing connection here with Wednesday, April 13th. It will be the 103rd day of the year, and as I've shown you many times, we always want to bring this back to the mythologies, and with that being said, we have Mercury. Tomorrow, again, the day of Mercury, Wednesday, and it's the 103rd day of the year, and Mercury in basic English ordinal Gematria equals 103. And why this is so important is because Mercury ties back to Bitcoin through the Chaldean cipher, and the Chaldean is a very important cipher. It ties back to Bitcoin. So we know that Mercury is a huge player in our game of finances because Mercury is literally the god of fiat, the fake money system, or the debt system. And we're going to see how this all ties in a little bit later. But I've been exposing this for a while now. So where this is all headed is just this interesting connection between this number 103, which you can see is tomorrow's date numerology, and 103 is the 27th prime number. And just remember that number 27. Tomorrow will also be 7 months and 6 days since the start of Shemitah, so that's 76. So the numbers we have in mind are 76 and 27, and that is what we get with a ripple. Okay, we have that 76 in English ordinal and the 27 in Chaldean, the two most important ciphers that I like to use. So we have a connection here with Ripple, and this could be something interesting as well, because if you pay attention to the full reduction in the reverse ordinal, that 40 and 86, well, it ties back to Mercury, 40 and 86. So there's definitely something to be said here with a Ripple in regards to transitioning out the old fiat system into what will be this new quantum system that we'll have in the future, a blockchain cashless society, essentially. So with this all being said, I'm really interested in how this is the transition date into April 14th. And we all remember April 14th last year. It was a very important day because it was the day that not only Bitcoin hit a cycle top, but also XRP, Ethereum, and a lot of other altcoins. And then since that date, we had a bigger sell-off in May. And there's that classic saying, sell in May, walk away, right? And we hit top on that day. And because we had such a substantial pullback on the eclipse of May, of 2021, this brought the retail sentiment into extreme fear, right? And this is just how the market works. It likes to have huge, sell-offs after the market becomes extremely greedy. And this is how there's balance. It's all about balance at the end of the day. So this 77, one of the ways that we could perceive this particular connection, and you might have heard me bring this up before, is 7-7 or 2 sevens. So the 2 sevens comes back to 27. And again, that 27 comes back to this 103 because 103 is the 27th prime number. So that 27 again coming back to Ripple. And what's even deeper is this is the day of Thursday, which is Thor's day, the day of Jupiter. And Jupiter gives us 27. So we know they're all tied in. Jupiter being the king of the gods, Zeus. All right? Where this all makes even, more sense in it all is the fact that this particular day is the 7 months, 7 days, which is the 77. And this will be all tied to Shemitah, the 7-year cycle. So we get that 77 again in Judaism, who is practicing this whole thing. And this is where the banking system comes into play, which again, this is very deep how it gets, but we need to pay attention to this when it comes to the more esoteric layer, so that way we can kind of see what's going on behind the scenes. Remove our emotion from what's happening and be more, knowledgeable about what's actually going on here, which is the bankers follow astrology, right? So this is definitely something to be considering because this date numerology of this day, which is the 7 months and 7 days since the start of Shemitah, the 7-year cycle, which we could perceive that as the 777. This will be the 15 date numerology, and we know this 15 has been playing such an important role this year. I've been showing you in my work for a while now. We are also in the 15th week of this year. So we're in the 15th week of the year. We're approaching the 15 date numerology on April 14th, which will be in 2 days. And this all comes back to the lunar new year we're in, which is the year of the tiger. Tiger in Chaldean giving you that 15 again. All right. So this is very important. These number 15s, I've been using it the whole year to make very good calls on how all of this is operating. And so far, this 15 connection has been giving us somewhat of a negative, outcome, whilst the number 14 has been seemingly a little bit more positive, and that has to deal with the connection to the Ram and Aries and all of that stuff. And we talked about that a couple months ago when we were discussing the prior Super Bowl. Now, with that being said, this is definitely interesting because as we know that Chaldean 15 ties back to XRP 15 in the same cipher, and we brought up this many times how that 22 is the year we're in right now. We're in the Hebrew year 5782, which reduces to 22, and XRP is the 22. And I'm always going to keep the Hebrew year as more important because at the end of the day, we're talking about finance, we're talking about currency, money, debt. That's why we want to talk about the Hebrew calendar because that's what's really moving this show. When we're talking about your birthday and all that other stuff, go ahead, use the Gregorian system. But this Hebrew system has much more power when we're trying to figure out and time the market. Don't get away from being in the market, though. Time in the market is so much more important than timing the market. But once you've been around here for a while and you've gotten to a place of neutrality, you're not as emotional anymore towards it. You could start learning this craft and see how you can implement it on the projects that you're interested in and the coins that you hold. So one of the other 15 connections to be made here is debt. Debt, of course, is what's running this entire system. We're in a debt bubble right now, and that debt bubble was created on purpose so that they could create a problem and then get their reaction solution, the Hegelian. And this is very important that we pay attention to this particular problem right now because we're in the Shemitah. And just like back in 1971 when there started to have, crisis in what was going on between gold backing the dollar, they decided to change legislature and change the global order of how money works on a global level. And this is probably what we're about to see happen within the next year. A year from today, we're probably going to have a restructuring of our financial system happening. That's very soon. And the reason why I say this is because we're on the Jubilee year. We're heading towards the Jubilee year. And Jubilee is on the 50th year. So what I'm saying is every 7 cycles of Shemitah, again, that comes back to the 7-7, 7 cycles of 7 years. That's 49 years. And on the 50th year, we have Jubilee. So what that means is in the Hebrew year of 5783, we have Jubilee. And that 23 ties right back to Mercury. This is not a game. This is very important that people take this seriously because now you're seeing why this hyperinflationary environment we're living in is absolutely just destroying people. People are getting priced out of the reality they were so comfortable within. And we see what's happening in China right now. They're pretty much implementing a food shortage. This is all done by design. And the ones who didn't prepare are the ones who have to bear with this problem. You guys, the ones who are paying attention to what's going on here, by the code, you could prepare yourself. More importantly, prepare yourself spiritually and emotionally. So this debt connection here with that 77, it's also making me think a lot about the word crisis because that's, again, what we're in. That's 77 again. And like I'm showing you, this will be the connection between 7 months and 7 days back to the start of Shemitah, the 7-year cycle. So that crisis, I mean, it's pretty obvious. It literally has the word Isis in it, and we know what that is. That's the moon. That's Luna. That's that big connection there. So I'm really interested in this because, of course, as some of you might know, this is the transition date into April 15th. And April 15th is it's a noticeable by now ritual date. It's a date which the apex predators tend to ritualize very heavily. And there's a website you could go to onthisday.com and then type in, April 14th, April 15th, excuse me, and you could just see the list of things that have happened. So one of the most popular ones was Abraham Lincoln's death, the assassination of John Wilkes Booth. By the way, John Wilkes Booth's brother, Thomas Booth, was born in Bel Air, Maryland. And that was a huge connection that I was sharing with my homie Donut Factory. Shout out to Alex over at Donut Factory. Because he was sharing his video yesterday. We got off of a phone call with each other and we were discussing some of the global events that were happening. And then he came out with this video, and I saw in one of the snippets that John Wilkes Booth's brother was born in Bel Air, Maryland. And remember, Will Smith became famous because of the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, that TV show. And who's, the most famous energy harvester on our world stage right now? It's Will Smith, because of that event that recently just happened. And humanity has completely allowed the confiscation of their energy to these two celebrities. So it shows you how easy it is to manipulate and brainwash and just coax wherever they need the mind of the masses to go, according to this distraction. This whole world is ran by influence, and if you allow yourself to be distracted, well, this is how you get caught in everyone else's storm. Create your sunshine. So with this big connection to April 15th, of course, we have the death of Abraham Lincoln, who probably wasn't even a white guy. They just make up history as they go. So you could see it was also the sinking of the Titanic. This had a lot to do with banking and the banking cabal and the transition into the globalist system that we're working on today, where they had the creation of the Federal Reserve System 1 year later. It literally has the word Titan in it. And, we talk about the mythologies, we talk about the Titans, Greek mythology, etc. And an iceberg sinks it. Those of you that are really into XRP, recently the David Schwartz and a couple of the team of Ripple were over there in Antarctica, and they were showing they're just giving you predictive programming. So I think about this stuff, because this is the way I think. Whenever I'm seeing these words, I connect it all, and I take everything into consideration from the esoteric perspective. There's so many things really to get in here. There was one event in 1968, which is obvious that they completely just made everything up by the numbers. Let me show you really quickly. It's quite interesting. So right here, the 72nd Boston Marathon. So remember that 72 is really important. It's half of the number 144. It's also the number that we get in Bitcoin with that 72. It's also the number we get in money. That's 72, the same thing. So money is moon, or it could also come back to moneta or Juno, for those of you that want to get a little deeper. But with that being said, we have 1968, 72nd Boston Marathon bombing, wins in 2 minutes and 22 seconds. And Bobby Gibb, first woman for third straight year in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. The 333 and the 222 and the 72nd anniversary of the Boston Marathon. Wow. Talk about bullshit, eh? Also, you see the number 43 popping up quite a bit, and the number 14. This is huge right here. The 1971 43rd Academy Awards Patton, which was a movie about war. Remember that number 43? And how the recent Super Bowl was a total of 43 points where the Rams won the Super Bowl, and everything was tied to the number 14 because 43 comes back to the 14th prime number. And then we moved straight into war narrative with Ukraine. And the colors of Ukraine flag are the same as the Los Angeles Rams. So that's a huge giveaway that this is all coded naturally into our reality. That couldn't have been pre-planned that far in advance. It's just mind-blowing when you see stuff like that, So there's a couple that are important. This one's huge right here. 1997, fire sweeps through a campsite of Muslims, making I don't even want to read this because this is horrendous. This is horrible that this happens to people, because the apex predators don't give a shit about us. They just ritualize whatever they want. And we read these terms, and they give these terms to identify a human being so that people have this, they get a specific way about it. And at the end of the day, we're all beings of light. We should love everyone. We shouldn't even be using all these fucking terms to call certain people. We're not any of this stuff. We're not our religion or our cult we belong to. Like the human species, if they woke up to this basic stuff, we would be enlightened to the point where we would no longer need our leadership. We'd be able to protect ourselves from these rituals. So anywho, sorry for the tangent, but got to get spicy sometimes. The official death toll is 343, and 343 is 7 times 7 times 7. So you see 7 times 7 times 7 equals 343. And remember, we were just talking about that big connection to the 7 days, a 7 months connection to Rosh Hashanah, which was on the 7th day of September, and that's the 7-year cycle. And this will be the 7th cycle of 7 years, which leads us to Jubilee. This is so many sevens, right? It's amazing. And the most recent events that have happened that are quite popular were, of course, the Boston bombing and the Notre Dame fire, which was obviously a fire ritual, and that happened in Paris. And remember, Paris is where the next Olympics will be, the 2024 Olympics, and they showed you the logo, the symbolism of this 2024 Olympics with Jupiter. It's the Jupiter Zodiac logo. And the logo of the 2024 Olympics is a flame, okay? This is all predictive programming, and we have a huge eclipse happening in April of 2024, just like we're in April now. This is a very popular month for rituals, so I would not be surprised, if something happens in a couple days, perhaps a false flag, but also on top of that, the big one happening in 2024. Like, that would be the dramatic big change. So, go through this because you're going to be able to find so many numbers. Another one was the U.S. deadliest day during C-19 pandemic with whatever. They're saying it was the deadliest day. This date that I'm talking about, April 15th. So just be open-minded. Something can absolutely happen on that particular day, which is the 15th. Now, a couple other deeper connections we have here is this will be the 16 date numerology on April 15th. So that number 16, it always brings me back to Russia. Russia giving you that 16 in Chaldean. And again, it's a ritual day, and we know this is the biggest word on the world stage, the Russia-Ukraine conflict. So that giving me the 16, it's definitely showing me that that could be one of the connections. Also, the 16th tarot card in the major arcana is the Tower. So the Tower could represent unexpected or massive change, misery, distress, etc. And this will also be the 220th day since the start of Shemitah, and that again goes back to the 22. So in rules of numerology, remove the 0, that's 22. We're in the Hebrew year of 5782, that's the 22. Ukraine gives us 22 in Chaldean and 79 in English ordinal, which is the 22nd prime number. So this is really interesting, guys. 22 is the master builder, master destroyer. Again, it could come back to what I was just saying with the Tower card. Okay, so I'm really interested in how this is all. Oh my God, yeah, wow. So I'm just taking the Roman numerals of this, the XVI, and again, we have that 55. And remember that 55, we were talking about with Platinum Jubilee giving us that 55, and that's the year we're in right now. We're in the 70th year of the Queen Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth gives you 55 in Chaldean. Holy shit. That was by mistake. I didn't even plan that. Okay. That's what happens when you're doing live videos like this. So again, the Tower card connection could be something. One other thing to mention is we're heading towards the full moon the following day, and that'll be the pink moon. And that pink moon is giving us the 107. And again, that transition date into the 17th is the 107th day of the year. And another thing is Tower card equals 107. And again, this is all about that transition date, 10744 on Tower card, just like pink moon equals 10744. So be considerate of these codes and how this transitions into the 107th day of the year. And on top of that, this will be the 222nd day since the start of Shemitah. So this is my final big day, and then we'll move on. But I think this is a pretty mind-blowing decode so far. So from September 7th, 2021 to April 17th, this would be 222 days in the 222 year. That's the year we're in, 2022, which is just 222. In the Hebrew year, 5782, which reduces down to 22. All about Shemitah. And this 22 is huge, right? We've been talking about it for a while now. But on top of that, out of all days, this connects with the 18 date numerology. And that is Shemitah, 18. So we should expect this week to be bonkers. And it's not just because of, it's not by mistake, guys. This is the 15th week of the year. The 15th week of the year, and everything so far since we started the month of February, which was the second month in our system. Remember, we had Pluto's return, United States Pluto's return on February 22nd, which is the 222 date, and that also equals Pluto's return also equals the 55. So that also ties to Satoshi Nakamoto, which equals 55. Anyways, so what's important about all of this is that 22 and the connection back to the year of the tiger, and tiger equaling 15. And we're in that 15th week of this year. It's all adding up now. We have this 222nd day towards this connection of Shemitah. It's big. So this is going to be a massive week, and I'm really interested. I hope this code has, helped enlighten some people into how they could use it for themselves. And perhaps, because this is all around a full moon, we have to be anticipating shakeouts. This is the time frame for shakeouts. The stock market still has about 4 full days left. Whilst the stock market is open, this market could get very volatile, very shaky, very unpredictable. We're in Shemitah, which is a very unpredictable time frame. So let's wrap this up with a little bit of TA. One thing that I found on my last Red Pill podcast, and again, for anyone who wants more exclusive content and you want to get, more behind the scenes, I actually do a podcast every single weekend called my Red Pill podcast, and I go over the full weekly wrap up of all the charts. I also go into some altcoins, and the altcoins are the ones that the Mastermind community selects. So the Patreon supporters actually vote on the altcoins that I check out every week. Now, I found this parallel channel that I did completely by mistake during that episode. So it was wild. And I also was able to share a lot of those date connections that I just gave you guys a little bit more in advance. So again, the Patreon is more behind the scenes stuff. It also includes the Discord that we run, which has a ton of members now. We're all helping each other to thrive during times like this. It's really great to be able to share all the charts with everyone in the Discord and share the decodes and just be a community that's helping each other, During a time of division, we're coming together to actually help empower each other, and that's a really beautiful thing. So again, anyone who becomes a Mastermind community supporter over on Patreon gets access to that Discord as well, and all the behind the scenes content. So what I did with this parallel channel was I started it at this high here around the start of the new year, and I brought it down to this low, and I extended it out to the recent rejection we've had. And this is classic because we have 1, 2, 3 rejections at the top, which confirms that trend line. And so far, I actually did this before the big pullback that we got yesterday. So we can see there's 1 touch point, 2 touch point, 3, and it looks like now we're heading, literally, we perfectly gravitated back towards it. Now, what I did that was the mistake was I extended it to the back. So I extended this parallel channel to the left, and I said, holy shit, look at this. We got the rejection off of the highs on the automatic rally into 2019. We got this whole area of support during the last bull run when Bitcoin went from like $300 all the way up to 20,000. We could see that it popped through this area, back tested, and then that was when it made it the parabolic move to the upside. And then after this bull trap, bigger correction, it came perfectly down to this level of support. Again, jumped above it, came back to it as support. Jumped above it, tried to hold it as support. Once we couldn't hold it as support, we came back in, got rejected at the heart line, and that was when things got really, really disturbing. But once we had this big like cup and handle formation, we recovered and went boom, straight to the top of that resistance. That is beautiful. Look at that. Rejection off the resistance, rejection off the heart line, rejection off the bottom resistance. Then again, another correction to the downside. So this was an amazing find, and this is where it gets even crazier. This swiped through the 2014 bull run highs. How insane is this? Literally, right there to the top. So this is probably the most important mistake I've ever made. And I have this saying that I give people all the time when people are kind of feeling dark, feeling sad, having anxiety, depression, and I'm on calls with people, I'm, talking with people one-on-one, and they talk about their mistakes or they talk about things they haven't done, they haven't accomplished. And one of the number one things I tell them is, whenever you feel that way, I want you to say to yourself, all of my mistakes were my greatest decisions. And what we start to see is that when we react positively to anything that's negative in our reality, we are now giving it gratitude and abundance instead of lack. And that's really what this world wants out of everyone, is to just continue to be in a consistent state of lack and fear and judgment and the lower vibrational frequencies, the lower chakras. But when you escape out of that trap, you go from hell to heaven. And that's a very, very, oversimplified way of stating it. But I feel like the simplicity in such a thing is something that could really help humanity. So just remember that whenever something negative happens or whenever you make a mistake, even if it's something, nonsensical, like doing charting on your computer, what I'm learning here is that when you're just playing around and having fun, sometimes your mistakes are your most brilliant findings. So with that being said, I take no credit for this. It was just a mistake, but it was really amazing to find such a thing. Now, as we're seeing, this does look like a bear flag. This does look like a problem, okay? So what I'm thinking now is typically we have sell in May, walk away into the Shemitah year. Every Shemitah, we tend to gravitate positively into the end of Taurus, which is around May 18th, May 19th, and then we have a bigger correction after that. I'm not saying crypto will 100% follow this, because crypto has only been around for a very small amount of time in comparison to when I'm studying the charts of the S&P 500, etc. We have 100 years of data going back with some of the indices, but with Bitcoin, we only have like 12 years of chart history. So be open-minded. But what I'm trying to say is I'm not playing around with this anymore, with this parallel channel and this upside resistance. After we got this rejection and this bigger pullback down through this heart line, gravitating perfectly down to this support, this tells me a couple things. One, if we break down through this support, it could get bloody really quickly for a spring. Something where we dive down to this wick low here or the wick low there around 33K and then possibly spring back up. And we've seen this happen before right back here, where we see a big wick here. We were jumping all around, choppy, made a slightly new high, but then gravitated right back to fill this wick. Again, choppy, and then again, we filled the wick again. So filling out those wicks is very normal, is what I'm trying to say, in cryptocurrency. The function of why it happens doesn't really matter. It's how you will react to it. That's all that matters. So if we filled a wick, that would definitely be indicative of any closures below this bottom line, because we have yet to get closures on the daily below this bottom support line. With that being said, gravitating up out of this full moon territory within the next, week would be definitely normal. But as I've exposed to you by the code, there's some things to consider. There's definitely some big numbers here to take into consideration. The 222 days since the start of Shemitah, for instance, that's definitely one of them. So as we get closer towards the 19th, 20th, 21st of April, that is sort of where I would be anticipating recovery into the end of the month, because again, at the end of the month, we have that eclipse, but it's also a new moon, and we tend to gravitate bullish into new moons. Even if there's a slight sell-off on the eclipse, we tend to gravitate towards new moons in an upwards trajectory. That's the point being made here. So this is opportunity, in my opinion, but I do not think this is a time to gamble money. So unless you're a really sophisticated trader, you know how to do technical analysis and read charts, this is an opportunity. But for those of you that are new here, be cautious. Don't mess around right now. Just consider what you've learned through the last week, how we could very quickly move up, but very, very quickly move back down. And that's why my energy when I come on here and make videos, I don't get excited when we're moving up. I don't get sad or, depressed when we're moving down. I am neutral. Because as a technical analyst and somebody who's an educator in the space, it's important that we hold a neutral perspective on all of this. If you start having a long-term, like Warren Buffett-like mentality towards this market, you no longer care too much about the day-to-day. I've already become a professional trader in this space, so it allows me to see how the ebbs and flows of this market go. When you make trades that are responsible with a conservative amount of your positions and a conservative amount of your leverage, you don't really need to worry too much if you have a big devastating pullback or if you have a big pump if you're in a short. You just learn. This is the whole purpose of what's going on here. Continue to learn. That's a very important thing. Whilst we're still a nascent asset class that's yet to be adopted by the mainstream, this is your time to learn while they have their head in their phones looking at Will Smith slap Chris Rock. the more you pay attention to this future economy and learn the ins and outs of it and learn the technology itself, go study it, you're going to see how you have such an edge on everyone else. And once you've overcome those basics and fundamentals of learning that, then you want to learn this more esoteric stuff, learn the Gematria, the numerology, and all of that. And again, that's all stuff that I teach in my Mastermind course. And for the price that it is and having 120 videos, it's packed full of all of this stuff, including the more normal investment thesis, stuff that's being told on the mainstream, just the basics, Peter Lynch style stuff, Richard Wyckoff. He was a legend in this market. And I feel like the newer people in the newer generation, they disregard those legends because they were living at a time where it was much, much different. And people think human behavior is different, and I disagree. I think human behavior is the same. And Warren Buffett actually said this. He said in 20 or 50 years, humans are still going to be the same, and they're still going to be doing the same foolish things they did 50 years ago. He's 100% right. And when it comes to rich people, people with a rich mindset, they're always going to be doing the complete opposite of what those people are doing. That's a very important thing to take note of. Whether you like or don't like Warren Buffett, it doesn't matter. That's a very sincere truth. So from a technical perspective, I don't think we have to overthink this too much. I think we just have to consider holding the support line. And if we cannot, it would be a return down to the 236, which is a very normal level. And then we have this heart line on any recovery from there. We tend to gravitate towards the heart line on any recovery. If we could break above the heart line, well, I guess we would gravitate towards the top of this channel. And by the month of May, it would be somewhere around 50K. By the May full moon, the May eclipse, it would be literally 50K, 51K, which is the bottom of the golden pocket, and that is very important to take note of. Bitcoin gravitating towards the 618 or 702 fib at this time would be amazing. It would be miraculous for the altcoins, but it would be a very, tough decision for a lot of people. Do I want to de-risk with the, safety and security of what's to come, which could be a dramatic pullback, which is normal during a Shemitah? Or do I want to continue to get greedy and expect Bitcoin to go into new all-time highs? That's where people make their worst decisions, is when we're up at resistance. Especially when you're a trader. It's very hard to know when to de-risk, and that's why I definitely recommend people consider develop an exit strategy. Once you develop your own exit strategy, you start to really, really, get a edge on this market over the average market participants who are just waiting to be told what to do. So when it comes to Ethereum, it's the same story. If ETH continues to deal with Bitcoin being below that 43K level, it's probably going to stay within this $3,000 range right now. 3,000 is a very psychological level for Ethereum. We saw this perfect rejection at this trend line that I called out months in advance, so that was a really beautiful thing to see come to fruition, and us back testing the middle of this W. So this was a clean W. The fact that we're back testing the neckline of that, and that's in alignment with the 0.5 fib, that's another opportunity area. So again, not me saying to build a long position, just saying that from a technical perspective, if this level can't hold, we're probably going to gravitate down to this red line, which has been a support line for a while now. You could see all these touch points going back to January of 2021. So that's over, a full year ago. And on top of that, we also have this trend line this 0.5 fib, which is the neckline of that W, which is a textbook area to backtest after a W breakout. And this would be pretty amazing, because if this plays out with a nice bounce plus closes above this trend line, I would suspect we could actually potentially see a $4,000 ETH before the end of May. That'd be really beautiful, because that would bring liquidity to all the altcoins. Okay, XRP, just final thoughts. We broke down through this white trend line, which has been slithering around this trend line like a serpent for freaking like a year now, and we broke down through it again. And as we broke down, we went to this key level of the 786, which is on a bearish fib trace. Fib retrace pulled from this level at 36 cents to the yearly high last year of $1.96, and you can see we're pretty much returning right back to it, which now it's definitely starting to look really gross. So like this chart's starting to look really, really choppy, and I believe this looks very similar to the 2014 chart of XRP, where it just zigzagged around and then out of nowhere it went up in a straight line. So I really, this is one of those things that we're gonna need some recovery in the overall market in order for liquidity to shift into Bitcoin, and then that liquidity to shift into the altcoins. We essentially need Bitcoin around that $50,000 level to see what's called an alt season. I know that sounds really ridiculous, but essentially the way it would work is getting that liquidity up in Bitcoin, getting that market cap up to around 50,000, plus a little bit of recovery on Bitcoin dominance, like 44-45% level, plus a correction. After that, all that liquidity flooding into Bitcoin and into the altcoins, Bitcoin dominance breaking below 38%, and that leading to a flood in the alts. And we know this is very easy because it only takes a couple of, tens of millions of dollars to push an altcoin up 100% in one day. It doesn't take a lot, guys. So pay attention to that. I know also the DXY, dollar currency index, has been doing really well lately. Haven't we been talking about that for a while now, though? I've been telling you guys to prepare for that for so long. So the fact that we're seeing that type of movement in the DXY, it's nothing to not be expected. We have this huge cup and handle formation that's going back all the way since the start of the pandemic 2 years ago. And where's the handle? That's really what we need. And that's kind of what I'm interested in seeing. We see this beautiful W that had a breakout bullish. Now we're within that golden pocket heading towards that 786. When this shit starts to break up and close 2-day, 3-day, even weekly candles above the $100 range, 101, that's a sign of, there's probably a market sell-off underway. But we saw this huge dump right here and this huge shot up, so we know that the DXY could get volatile. We just have to pay attention to stuff like that. Typically, the volatility kicks in like that over here during Black Swans or during the end of Shemitah, so sometime around late September into October. That's when we usually see that. Right now, we're in April, so we still have some time to go. So a little bit of a market recovery during this week would be great, considering yesterday's sell-off. That's pretty normal. And I suspect we'll move through this week, on average, how we typically see the market moving around a full moon. We might have gotten our lows in yesterday because it was 5 days before a full moon. And now we can just be keeping around the lows till we move through the full moon and then have some recovery into the end of the month, heading towards that April 30th eclipse. So I'm going to leave it there. I do plan to have a decode coming out this week about the entire Shemitah decoded. So I'll be doing a Gematria decode for the Shemitah, and it will be breaking down the rest of how this year is going to go, in my opinion, based on the code. So I'm really excited to share all that with everyone. It's going to be packed full of information, packed full of date connections, lots of, food for thought. So I'm really excited to share that with everyone. I'll be releasing the Shemitah Gematria Decoded this week, and I also plan to be doing that giveaway that I planned on doing at the end of this week as well. So it's going to be an exciting week for the Patreon, and I have next week's Red Pill episode on the weekend. I appreciate every single one of you. Hope you enjoy this video. Much love.